aside, sorry, you can't correct that. And so there have been times that workers have gone to court and said, you have to fund the pensions, otherwise we're not going to get the thing to which we're entitled. And the state has basically defended those suits by saying, well, you know, we'll make the payment, we'll pay the pensions out one way or another, leave us alone. And the courts have granted that kind of, have been deferential to the state in that respect. But what that's meant is there's this fundamental mismatch between a strong protection of the benefit itself and no protection whatsoever of the mechanism to pay it out. And so we've allowed this debt to get bigger and bigger and bigger, which is irresponsible fiscally and dangerous, of course, for everybody, right? Someone's going to pay on the back end because of Article 13, Section 5. That someone is not going to be the participants in the pension system, but it will be someone. And that payment is going to be a lot harder to make than it would have been if we just made it on time, starting in the 1950s when the payments already weren't being made properly. By the way, just one last, I'm sorry, this topic is fun for some people and less fun for normal people. But the point you made about your resignation is a super important point. It's worth looking under the hood and thinking about how we actually manage our pension systems and how the lines of accountability work and who's doing oversight. And it's Byzantine and ineffective. And so you have 628 different pension boards in the state of Illinois, many of them operating almost without scrutiny, many of them operating over a little fiefdom and a tiny pot of money. The investment returns aren't necessarily good. The administrative costs are tremendous. It's just not a good way to run a railroad. And I think that there's real opportunity both to just do it better, but then also by virtue of doing it better to save real money, if we ask ourselves that question. Not the question of what's the right benefit level, but rather the question of how do you pay it out? How do you design the system? How do you invest the money? Who's doing oversight? Who's asking questions? Who's making investment decisions? How are the administrative costs being kept low? We don't do that nearly well enough in Illinois, and there's a price to be paid because of that.
You're alluding primarily in that with regard to the police and fire and some of the local ones, which can be consolidated, but that wouldn't. There's not a way that would affect the
state budget.
The state, would it?
I'm alluding to a number of things. So my personal pet hobby horse, if you can have a pet hobby horse, which it's a little inanimate for a pet, but I don't know. Anyway, enough about that sort of quasi-animal metaphor. My hobby horse is exactly what you alluded to. That we've got around 600 different fire and police pension systems. Waukegan's got 2, one for their firefighters, one for their police officers. So does North Chicago. So does almost every town in Illinois. And that is just totally unlike most states. And it creates inefficiency. It creates all sorts of problems. If we were to do what Ohio did in 1965 and consolidate them, all that would over time save a lot of money for municipalities. You're right. It wouldn't be a direct saving to the state's bottom line, but I don't think we should really pretend that it's not all interconnected. Right? The truth of the matter is the public sector is the public sector. And if we were to do something like that that would really save serious money out of municipalities' costs over time, that benefit could be essentially spread out in a variety of different places. And since it's all coming out of the pocket of the same taxpayer, ultimately it's kind of comparably beneficial. But I wouldn't end the story there. We were talking about the kind of very, very modest oversight authority of the pension board. I think it's worth talking about the questions of who's making the salary decisions and who's having to pay the tab. I think there's a lot of different ways where the system doesn't have perfectly aligned incentives and a perfectly streamlined design. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the question that we ought to be asking, because it's a question that if answered can make structural fixes that are also constitutional and fair and reasonable. And I feel like we've gotten away from that because we've been so focused on these kind of ugly fights that, in addition to being pretty confrontational and vicious, I guess I would say, also don't accomplish anything, because we wind up having years-long battles that are then overturned by the Supreme Court, which is, frightening and aggressive and unfair, and then actually puts the state in a worse financial position because you spent all this money going to court and haven't actually done anything to improve your problem. Yep.
So who makes the decision? You know what, we're not going to make the pension payment because I think we need to do such and such.
Great question. It depends. So there are 5 state pension systems. So by state pension systems, I don't mean they're state workers. I mean they're systems for which the state has the primary responsibility to make the payments. Those are the state worker system itself, the university employees, the teachers, except for Chicago public school teachers, the judges, and the legislators themselves. And those systems all get an annual, or don't, get an annual payment from the state of Illinois. And there's just no rules there in the following sense. If the state legislature just feels like saying, never mind, we're going to pay $1 billion instead of $5 billion, there's nobody that can stop them. And so there's a payment schedule in the law. By the way, a really dumb payment schedule that was put in place in the mid-90s, and that's part of the problem. But if the legislature and the governor want to agree to come off that payment schedule and pay even less, they can do it.
So it's the legislature and the governor.
Correct, for those 5 pension systems. Now, for the other pension systems, it varies, right? So for the Waukegan Fire Pension System, that's the city of Waukegan. Now, they are told by the state how much to put in. The quality of the enforcement there is, depends on who you ask, to be perfectly honest. And historically, the state has not always given kind of appropriate and responsible guidance on that front. Chicago Public School pension is a similar thing, where the state tells them, but over the years, historically, when CPS or the city of Chicago wanted the rules to be changed, they were often able to just go to Springfield and lobby to get a bill passed, and that bill would get passed. And so every system is a little bit different, and some of them work much more poorly than others. But it's always different versions of foxes guarding hen houses. And fundamentally, if you actually want to have a system that's going to work, you can't skip your payments all the time, but you also can't skip your payments half the time. You can't skip your payments a third or a quarter of the time either. You have to be consistent. And that's where sort of relying on the benevolence of politicians approach has really left us in trouble.
I guess I just feel like Illinois has a problem in that more people are actually leaving the state than actually are coming.
But
And the people that are coming are making less money than the people who are leaving.
that's right.
And I guess my scenario, my problem is what is your plan to address the poverty and the lack of living wage jobs?
Yeah. There's a lot to say about this, and I'll try to condense as much as possible, but
And in the back of
The
my
question-
head,
go ahead, finish the question, then I'll repeat it.
I mean, yes, but I guess, I'm sort of finished, but I keep thinking of Chicago and Chirac. Excessive violence, and it ties in, but I'm thinking of the main part is I just feel like it's not safe for me to live here economically.
Yeah. So the question is, what are we going to do about a lack of economic opportunity in parts of Illinois, a lack of middle-class jobs in parts of Illinois, the fact that people are leaving the state and jobs are leaving, and then the violence as well. So I hope you all have a long time. It's a giant question. I'll start at the end by saying that there are many things that must be done if we want to address the violence properly, many things. But I do think that your first part of the question really feeds into that in a crucial way. The lack of economic opportunity in chunks of the state of Illinois has been a significant driver of the horrific spike in violence. By the way, not having a budget for 2 years was also related to the horrific spike in violence. It's all connected. If you believe that investment in communities and provision of social services works, and then you cut off social services and stop investing in communities, you shouldn't be surprised to see that the consequence is horrific violence. So let's talk about living wage jobs, and let's talk about jobs in general. First of all, around living wage jobs, let's just do it. Let's just do it. I'm a proud co-sponsor of a $15 minimum wage. That bill is on Governor Rauner's desk. I will confess to lacking a significant level of confidence that he's going to sign that bill, but he ought to do it. you ought to do it. And let's not stop there. Let's enact paid sick leave. Let's enact family leave policies. Let's create a system of childcare that allows people with children to work. Let's understand that investment in childcare doesn't only pay back in the long term because you've helped to prepare a child for kindergarten, and then that person is able to be more productive in the workforce a generation later. It also helps right now because that child's parent can work. Let's enact fair scheduling policies and overtime policies. Let's have a worker-friendly state so that there isn't an epidemic of people working full-time and living in poverty. There are people who will tell you that that will cut off job creation, and it will certainly cut off a particular type of job creation. It will make Illinois unsuccessful in competing in the race to the bottom. It will make Illinois unsuccessful in comparing ourselves with Texas and South Carolina as companies are looking across the country for the cheapest place to hire. But the data that are amassed when states try experiments like this are pretty clear. That even though that's true, that even though the bottom feeders now want to go somewhere else, jobs are still created and the economy still does well. Why? Number one, people want to come. People want to come if they believe that should they find employment, they're not going to be living in poverty. Number two, people have more money in their pockets and they spend it. And by spending it, they're able to help spur more economic development in their own community. Fundamentally, the minimum wage increase is a transfer of wealth from the richest people who are paying salaries to the poorest. And the folks over here spend their money in a lot of places in the world. They spend their money on vacations abroad. They spend their money on complicated financial instruments that are located in Japan. Folks down here spend a lot of their money in the neighborhood. A lot more of it. And so this kind of economic policy over time is very, very beneficial for job creation. But I don't think we should stop there. I think we should ask ourselves the same business climate question that Bruce Rauner asked himself, but I think we should give a much more real and thoughtful answer. Bruce Rauner seems to believe, I shouldn't say Bruce Rauner seems to believe, Bruce Rauner obviously believes that if you want job creation, you got to do two things. Get rid of taxes and get rid of regulations. And